My name is Jared Miller, and I'd like to welcome you all to this Fireside Chat with hosts and experts. This online event is an opportunity for web hosts and other professionals in the industry to hear from some of hosting's leading experts. For today's chat, we'll be discussing elastic sites or elastic hosting. And I know some of you guys may be completely unfamiliar with that term, and I know I was as well, but our panel is going to break down everything you may want to know about elastic sites and how you can start using it in your shared hosting business. However, if you do want some additional light reading before we get into the discussion, we do have some white papers and files attached in the handout section that you see on the right, so you can go into that section and download some PDFs and start reading about elastic sites as well as elastic hosting. But before I turn it over to the panelists, I want to let all attendees know that there will be an opportunity at the end to have, we're going to have a Q&A. And so if you have any questions, please stay until the end and submit all your thoughts in the questions field also on the right, and we'll be doing our best to get as many of your questions answered as possible. Now I'll take this moment to introduce our panelists. We have the CEO and founder of Antagonist Hosting, and I believe he also heads up the WordPress server security solution Patchman, Mr. Wouter de Vries. Wave to the
Hello, everyone.
Next, coming to you live from down the hall, from where I'm currently sitting, is the Chief Business Officer of cPanel Inc., Mr. Aaron Phillips. And last but certainly not least, we have the founder and CEO of Cloud Linux, Mr. Igor Seletsky.
Hello.
All right. So to get started off, I'll start with Igor, and I want to let all the panelists know, you guys feel free to jump in and add to any of the questions that I'll be throwing out there. But Igor, can you explain to everyone listening, as well as me myself, what exactly is elastic sites or elastic hosting?
Sure, and thanks everyone for joining. I see a lot of people joined us today. So we were thinking about the concept of elastic sites, and it wasn't named elastic sites at first for a long, long time. We have shared hosting, we have VPS, we have dedicated, we have cloud. Why do we need something else? Do we need something else? We always actually knew that we need something else, and it came from the understanding that a lot of people are unhappy when they are being moved from shared to VPS or dedicated. We spoke a lot about that with our customers, and the issue comes up over and over again. When customer overgrows shared hosting site, they're being moved to VPS and they're unhappy. They're unhappy because they have to now manage their environment, which they don't know how to do. They now have to be in charge of their own backup. They need to buy additional software like cPanel license, backup license, all those licenses that typically you give them for free as part of their shared hosting account. They have to secure their server, which they don't know how to do. So we had this set of hosters who would do shared hosting and they would do VPS. And when the customer would go from shared to VPS, the customer was expected to find a sysadmin in-house or outside who would handle all that workload, and the price would jump from, I don't know, $10 per month to hundreds of dollars per month, which is not realistic, and a lot of people didn't do that. They would just throw things in and expect it to be secure and operate well, and typically what happens, they were unhappy and they would move to managed VPS. And managed VPS is a solution to that problem, where a hoster would provide all the management services. It is more expensive, but it is a solution. And the majority of customers are happier with moving from shared hosting to managed VPS versus moving from shared hosting to unmanaged VPS. But it's still significantly more expensive to have. And then there is an additional question of why are we doing that? Why are we providing each customer with managed VPS when, well, they don't need the full capabilities of VPS? They're not running any particular software that needs root access or something that is not available in shared hosting today. They are not doing hosting themselves, so they don't need to create hundreds of accounts. And so you're giving a lot of extra capability to the end customer. You as a host are doing all this management, which is much more expensive from your standpoint to do on a separate VPS than versus shared hosting, and that eats into your profit margins. So something that customer gets might be just shared hosting with more resources, but what you spend to provide it to the customer is significantly more expensive. You're paying more because VPS has much larger footprint. You're paying more because you need to create and provide this administrative management services. You pay more for software licenses. There is so many moments where you pay more, while customer gets basically the same as the customer would get if you give him shared hosting accounts with more resources. And that's when we started to think, like, why would people do that? And the reason we kind of came up with is that, well, first of all, it's a legacy thing. Before Cloud Linux, before C groups, before namespaces, before all those isolation technologies, if you put account on a shared hosting, its stability was low. It was expected part of a shared hosting that you had low stability. And so once your customer was willing to pay significantly more, you wanted to separate him to a separate box to get that stability. This is no longer the case. Today, we can provide you, and we do provide you with this technology that provides very high level of stability. And you have servers that haven't been rebooted for years. You have servers that you don't touch for years, where customers are fine. They're not affected by other customers. So it is as good as VPS in that perspective. And the only reason customers move today is not for the stability sake. It's for need of more resources. But that need is completely artificial. There is absolutely no problem for shared hosts to sell accounts with more than 2 cores. For example, they can sell 4 cores, 16 cores, as much as customer needs. And by doing that, they will remove the need for moving the customers to manage hosting, moving the customers to manage VPS hosting, dedicated, etc. And I think there is a lot of benefit, and that's where it came from. So Elasticsearch is not so much about technology. The technology is already there. It's not so much about what you're doing. It is already there. It's mostly, from my perspective, and I'm sure there is more, it's mostly about positioning the offers right, and providing the offers, and creating an industry standard about selling something using shared hosting platform, but that goes beyond shared platform. That's something that goes into the realm of providing 4, 8, 16 cores, something that would before be named semi-dedicated hosting, though I know the name was ruined before. That's where we're seeing Elasticsearch, and that's what we want to talk today about.
All right, so what I'm hearing is usually the idea is like people on shared hosting environments that need more resources tend to get moved to VPS and moved off of a shared environment because of stability issues, but Elasticsearch kind of resolves that issue.
Well, in my opinion, it's not even stability issues that drive people to move to VPS today. It's simply that customer starts to use more resources that a shared host is willing to provide on a shared hosting platform. And there is no reason to limit the amount of resources you give to the customer. What instead you can do is give more resources, charge significantly more money.
All right, so Wouter, I understand that you're deploying Elastic type hosting with Antagonist, am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome. Can you tell us how, what is the motivation behind you offering this service with Antagonist hosting?
Yeah, sure. So I believe we're actually one of the first hosting companies in the world who actually started doing Elastic sites. And it's for us, it's a journey that already started about 4 years ago in early 2013. We were seeing a huge market opportunity there because, well, let me just take you back to what the market looked like 4 years ago, and actually in many ways still looks like today, if not worse. because if you look at shared hosting in terms of a product life cycle, I would say shared hosting had entered a phase of maturity, right? It was a commoditized service, and no one was really innovating anymore, and there was virtually no differentiation anymore between offerings except for just pricing. So naturally, the only way for a hosting company to stay competitive would have been by joining the race to the bottom in terms of pricing, which obviously is not a really sustainable business strategy, because either you stop growing or you lose your margins, or you lose both of them. So, and another reason why we started thinking about this is that there was not a problem with shared hosting. It had gotten a really bad reputation with professional customers, what Igor was also already talking about. And frankly, for a good reason, because many companies have been overselling aggressively, throwing thousands of customers on a single box, which of course resulted in an unstable and unreliable service. And you know, when you think about it, only a few years ago, a single customer could bring down an entire server with a crappy PHP script. Now, fortunately, Cloud Linux, of course, solved that issue, but the issue still remains that a professional would think twice about deploying a commercial site on shared hosting because it had gotten such a bad reputation. Meanwhile, VPSs were getting quite popular. So there were because it would give the advantage of no more noisy neighbors. You would get a lot of performance for your money, and many hosting companies started offering VPS solutions next to their shared hosting offerings, because just like we were, the best customers were outgrowing shared hosting, and you were losing them because they needed more performance. But at Antagonist, we never started offering VPSs because I just don't really like them. Because frankly, in the customer's perspective, in many ways, VPS is, in my opinion, an inferior product to shared web hosting. It's more expensive, and suddenly a customer needs to manage their own server, even though they have no idea how to do that. Or they need to buy a managed VPS, which is even more expensive. So yeah, in my eyes, VPS don't make a lot of sense in many cases. Well, anyway, to me it became clear that as a shared hosting company, we would get in trouble if we wouldn't make a move 4 years ago. So either we had to join the price war, which in my opinion is no fun, because it's a race to the bottom and leaves no room for innovation, or we would radically change our business, build a greatly superior product, and perhaps even increase our pricing, which would allow us to continue to invest in innovation and new initiatives. So right about that time, it all hit me, and I was thinking, all the great tools that Cloud Linux already provides, that were built originally to, increase server density, limit abusive customers, you could actually turn those into the foundation for a fantastic new service, which we now call Elastic Sites. So instead of using the Cloud Linux technologies to limit abusive customers, you could actually use it to future-proof your company by turning it into an automated managed VPS company, basically, because that's exactly what Elastic Sites are, right? Elastic Sites, they offer the best of both worlds. You get the scalability and performance of a private server, and you keep the low cost and convenience of shared hosting. So customers can start at a low cost, and as their needs grow, then you can offer them more resources, and they can keep growing in their familiar environment. So in my opinion, for most use cases, Elastic Sites are far superior to VPSs. So we thought out this concept, and we've been trying how we want to do it. And then eventually in 2014, around June, around my birthday actually, we relaunched Antagonist with Elastic Sites, and we migrated all of our customers to this new concept. And I have to say, it's been a huge success. Our customers love it, and it's been great for our business.
I think Igor touched on it just when he was talking, but the number one, when we went out to hosting providers, shared hosting to VPS is often their number one churning product. So as they're moving people from non-technical to very technical, lots of hosting providers find that the customer is not willing or capable of actually doing what they've been provided. So this Elastic Sites also solves that.
So it can resolve retention issue, customer retention issues that need, like customers that may otherwise leave because they need to grow, and you can start using this Elastic Sites model to kind of like help these customers that are kind of these burgeoning, growing customers.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I mean, if you think about it, it's a really weird customer journey, right? I mean, you start with shared hosting at a low cost because you're starting out with your website. Then suddenly you get success, you start growing, you need more resources, and then that partner that you've been relying on for all the time, suddenly they tell you like, I'm sorry, but you gotta go. You gotta go either to someone else or you gotta go to this other product that we have, which is a completely different kind of product because they came to you in the first place because they don't know how to manage the server, and then suddenly they need to manage the server, which is the last thing they want to do because they're super busy with growing their business. So that's the weird thing about it.
We had one company, rather large hosting provider, who shared the numbers for us, and when they switched their shared hosting customer to VPS customer, they saw more than 50% of those customers leave within the first 3 months.
So one of the things
and almost all of them within 18 months.
Most likely.
All right, so we kind of talked about like scalability and reliability. I want to kind of hear from Aaron, or what are kind of the features and requirements you think customers have that would qualify them to be an appropriate candidate for Elasticsearch or Elastic hosting?
That's to me?
Yeah, you or anybody who wants to. Can you hear me?
I did not hear you.
Yeah, so customers, we talk about customers are looking for reliable and scalable hosting with substantial resources, and you're proposing Elasticsearch as an alternative. And I just want to know what are some of the features and requirements you think customers have to offer that would qualify them for an Elasticsearch or Elastic hosting.
So I mean, they touched on it earlier. I mean, the site's growing, it's getting, and really what it needs is it needs allocated resources. It needs CPU, it needs RAM, it needs I/O. But what it doesn't need is root level access to manage the website. So I think that the qualifier there is people that have websites are utilizing more resources than the shared hosting provider can offer, but do not want to manage a server. And those are the people that Wouter is doing with, and those are the people that hosting providers are challenged with today of providing solutions to keep their business.
Yeah, I also think that what we see is that most hosting providers today, they already have some kind of upsell strategy, and it's very simple to qualify the customer. When I'm upselling to the customer, am I upselling it to him because his site became popular and it's no longer good for shared hosting, or am I upselling it to him because he needs a different solution that is not a good fit for shared hosting? And if the customer needs a different solution, like they need a Tomcat server, they need Node.js, they need something very custom specific, then yes, VPS is still a valid product. But majority of cases that shared hosts deal with is, oh, my site became popular and now it's hitting all those CPU, memory, I/O limits that were set. What can I do? And before, a lot of people would tell them time to move to VPS, and today we want them to be told, well, let us upgrade you to our premium product, Elasticsearch, that will be as expensive as VPS. Don't get me wrong, you should still get this money, but will deliver much better margins and benefits to you.
All right, so then let's get into the nitty-gritty of it, and I'm sure it's the same thing that everybody's wondering, like, what do the margins look like? How do people make money off it? Like Wouter, you've implemented it. You guys have kind of done some research on it. What does the money look like when someone starts using Elasticsearch in their shared offering?
Well, I would say when we were thinking about pricing, in terms of value, I would say basically you have two components, right? So you're getting the resources of a VPS, and on top of that, we as a hosting provider, we're taking care of management for you. So in my opinion, you should be trying to charge a little bit over VPS, or even so a little bit over an unmanaged VPS, but basically you're providing services comparable to a managed VPS. So that's basically your value proposition, that you're providing, well, the service of a managed VPS at, let's say, 10 times less than what you would pay for a managed VPS. That's basically how I would position it, and that's how we've done it at Antagonist.
You guys have any feedback on what the money looks like with elastic sites?
Well, so there is two things of it. I mean, Walter was very good with explaining the pricing, and I think he's much better expert in it than me. But pricing it somewhere between unmanaged VPS and managed VPS sounds like the right plan. And from the profit margins, there is a lot more room to spare. Because first of all, you have all the systems already in place. You have to do the same type of management for your shared hosting customers as well. You have to make sure that the server is updated. You have to make sure that the server is backed up, and you do that on everyday basis anyway. So there is no extra cost to have. Just from the resource standpoint, you can realize that first of all, you are taking up much less disk space. I mean, typical VPS, no matter how small it is, it's at least 5-7 gigabytes of disk space wasted for the operating system install, which translates to terabytes and terabytes of data once you have thousands of them. So you save on disk space, you save on resources. So with shared hosting, it's very, very efficient. You actually have single Apache, single kernel, which makes sure that customers, like the same one core VPS with 1 gigabyte of RAM would be significantly less performant than one core 1 gigabyte shared hosting account. So you can offer better performance while using about as much resources just by reusing this shared approach. There is licensing cost benefits simply because you don't have to spend as much on all the software licenses you would otherwise have to purchase on behalf of the customer if you are providing managed VPS. So you have this whole bunch of costs that are now out of the window. You're no longer spending money on that, and you can channel those costs towards the marketing, and you can outperform, can provide better, faster solution at the same or lower price points that have higher margins that managed VPS has today, and that's the de facto standard for upselling these days. So it's very interesting as an approach to grow your company, because it gives you competitive advantage over larger players that have the economy of scale on their side for managed VPS. And at the same time, it gives you something that your customers truly and really wants.
Awesome. I'm going to take one question from one of our audience members who says, I understand the concept, but I do not understand the execution. How do you do this? Do you move the customer to a separate server that has less users? Do you still oversell? Can you guys speak to that?
Yeah, let me take that. It's a very interesting question. So one thing I want to mention is that we see people doing it today already. And it's all of the above. You do oversell. If you don't oversell, I mean, it's impossible not to oversell today. You oversell on VPS, you oversell with VPS on CPU, you oversell with VPS, depending on the style, VPS on memory, simply because otherwise you will be wasting a lot of resources. Your typical VPS node that is not oversold on CPU would use about 7% of CPU resources of that node. 7, not even double digits. So if you're not overselling CPU, you're wasting a lot of resources of your server. With memory, it's a little bit harder to oversell, but there is still plenty of room for overselling. So yes, you should oversell. How much you should oversell? Well, that's a question that is not that simple to answer, but still there is some guidelines. And the way you can look at it is that look at how much idle CPU you have at the worst time, how much free memory you have at the worst, at the peak time. and make sure that if 2 accounts on your server will grow to full of their capability, you still have some resources. So for example, you're selling 8 core accounts, like maximum. So what you should make sure is that at any time you should have at least 10 cores available idle at any point of time. You should still be able to put plenty of those accounts on a server if it's like 24 core servers, because most of the times they will not be using it all at the same particular time. But you do oversell, you do put like, you can probably sell on a 24 core servers, you can probably sell about 60 cores or 80 cores in total, and still get this 10 cores available at any time. Same is true about memory. So make sure you have enough reserve so that you can pretty much guarantee the customers that when they need all the power, they have enough room, and go from there. Of course, there is also moving accounts. You will have to move and rejiggle accounts between the servers as you get more and more customers, as customers start to use more and more, and that's something that you have to do. Today it would be mostly manual, meaning you would have to use cPanel tools to move the accounts. In the future, we will probably, and I'm talking about 1 year, 2 year time frame, we will have something that will help automate the process so that it's self-managed. Well, it's not self-managed, but self-administering system. But you can start today simply by reserving enough space and moving accounts around as needed. I think Walter can tell how he does it in his company.
Yeah, so in the case of Antagonist, you know, you're right. I mean, you do need to take into account that you will be moving accounts as they grow. So we've built our internal technology to move accounts automatically without any downtime. So whenever a customer upgrades to more resources, you know, it's maybe seconds that a website is unavailable, but they will be moved to another server where they get more resources. And in terms of overselling, I would say that also an important thing to understand is that with the cheaper hosting packages with not so much resources, there I would say you can oversell quite a lot, you know, because there will be a lot of, let's say, sleeping customers that just don't use a lot of resources. But as you grow to packages with more resources, you will also see that obviously people that upgrade to those packages, they most likely do that because they actually need the resources. So you will see that, you know, once you start selling 8, 12, 16 cores of performance, of course they will use that, because why else would they pay for that? So I would say that in the low-end entry hosting packages, there you can oversell a bit more than in the high-end packages, where naturally people, you know, will select themselves to those packages because they will actually need that.
So do you oversell on the high end at all, or if you have 24 core servers and you're selling 8 cores packages, you will have only 3 customers on such server?
Well, we actually don't really look at it in the sense of an individual package and how many we sell per server or something like that. What we actually do is we monitor our servers on just the CPU usage as a whole. And then based on that, we have an algorithm where we look at what kind of packages we host on those servers. And basically, the strategy is that, let's say, the most offensive account will be moved to a server that has more resources available. So it's really a dynamic system. So we actually don't really have any specific ratios of, okay, we oversell 10x in terms of cores or something like that. It's really a dynamic system where we just move as needed.
Okay.
Also, I think another important thing to note is that in our case, from the front end of our website, we only sell 3 packages. So we still have differentiation in our packages in terms of features, but we also have differentiation in terms of resources. So once you get to, let's say you have package A, B, C, once you get to package C, you have all the features that you could possibly have. But from that point, once you become a customer, then you can actually go deeper and you can get more resources. So normally speaking, new customers, they're usually in one of the, relatively speaking, entry packages. And, you know, it always takes a little while before they start growing, before they start actually using the resources. And then as they grow, we will start moving them to other servers when they actually need that performance.
Okay, so but to move to accounts, you need a dedicated IP, but isn't it getting harder and a little bit more expensive to do that?
Well, so this is one of the things, of course, we were the first guys around who started doing it, so we invested a lot in building technology where we can do that moving all automatically. So we actually, we don't spend a single second manually on moving websites. It's an automatic system where we automatically know which ones to move, and the system will also automatically take care of moving and take care of switching IPs, all that stuff. And like I said, it's basically without any downtime.
Yeah, I don't think you actually need a dedicated IP for switching the website, because all you need to do is propagate the DNS and set up the proxy on the other server. And from what I remember, Cipano actually does that already. So when you move the site from server to server, there is no downtime that has to be there while the move is in process.
Well, the problem is that there are still a lot of name servers around the world that don't respect the time to live settings of
Yeah,
DNS.
of course,
So.
but Cipano has a setting where, from what I remember, I might be wrong, but Cipano has a setting where it forwards the old request from the old server to new server for that site, so it works like mod proxy.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that works too.
So there is not a need for dedicated IP. You change the DNS, you use Cipano tool to move it, and you're done.
So we had another audience question that's kind of related. If you have Cloud Linux plus cPanel, do you have to move to a cloud environment to provide elastic hosting?
No, well, so first of all, we don't use cPanel because I guess this whole idea is not really related to what control panel you use, but in the case of Antagonist, we all still host everything on physical servers. So, you know, we fell for the fad of cloud hosting and everything for a little while, but we actually reverted back to having dedicated boxes because it's, in the end, it offers the best performance and also best cost in our case.
All right, this one's kind of for Aaron. What is the implementation in terms of software? Is Elasticsearch, and this is from the audience as well, like, is Elasticsearch the name for Cloud Linux plus cPanel? Can't hear. I don't think we can hear you. You there?
Yeah, we'll answer that one.
Okay. All right.
Okay, let me try to answer. So, no, Elasticsearch is not the name for the product. So the problem was that we had this concept of what to do, selling sites with more resources and instead of VPS for a long time. But what we understood is that if you name it premium hosting, how is it different from premium hosting that everyone else sells? If you name it semi-dedicated hosting, how is it different from semi-dedicated hosting 5 years, 7 years ago that people got burned and don't want to touch anymore? Like, we thought that we need a generic name that the industry will use to educate the customers. Not so much educate the customers, but a product to upsell. Because one of the strengths of VPS is the name. People are looking for the VPS. People are actually looking for VPS, and that's why there is a whole industry around this VPS. And if every host would just offer the same thing but under a different name, it would create a confusion in the market, and it doesn't benefit anyone. So that's where Elasticsearch came from. We looked for the name that wasn't used by anyone. We actually specifically searched and researched that Elasticsearch wasn't used by anyone, that had this elasticity in mind. We played with cloud sites, we played with many different names, but the whole idea was that the site can grow. It can start as a small site, but it can grow to 4 cores, to 8 cores, etc. and that every host would use to sell their premium, enterprise, semi-dedicated, whatever plans. So we still want you to use whatever name you might want to use for your hosting, but we do want you to use Elastic Sites when you're upselling customers so that they can kind of read up on what they're getting, so they can find out from what they're getting, and so that there is more and more acceptance in the market. We want to generate word of mouth advertisement for hosts that go into this so that later on, maybe not in the first 6 months, but maybe in 12, 18, 24 months, the customers would actually be looking for Elastic Sites. He wouldn't call your support and say, hey, my site is slow, I think I need to upgrade to VPS. I want them to call and say, hey, I think my site is slow and I want to upgrade to Elastic Site. That's the whole concept behind the name. And it's not about technology. It's not about Cloud Linux. It's not about cPanel. The technology doesn't matter as much as ability for the customer to get the performance he needs, to get the resources they need, to get the stability similar to VPS, which I believe Cloud Linux does provide today, and get the isolation similar to VPS. So as long as those three pillars are met, the site, the hosting company should consider themselves as offering Elastic Site, and we want them to use that name to educate the market. Like if someone starts to do cloud sites like Rackspace did, I mean, Rackspace, huge company, but the reality is that market doesn't know what cloud sites are. But if the whole industry starts using Elastic Sites and upsell people to Elastic Sites, it's very quickly that the audience, people, customers will realize what Elastic Sites are, and it will benefit everyone here, everyone in the hosting service provider market space.
So you're trying to give Elastic Sites kind of like the same name recognition as like VPS then?
That's exactly the case. We want to put Elastic Sites somewhere next to VPS, share it as dedicated names as used in service provider industry.
Okay, well then just from a pure branding curiosity, how did you guys, or who came up with the name Elastic Sites? How did that emerge?
I believe it was all Aaron and Mario discussing the idea, and they were extremely close. And then we talked to Aaron, and it just clicked that it was there. That's the name we want to use. I don't think it was one person who came up with the idea. We had sites, cloud sites, Elastic host, Elastic servers, cloud servers. So we tried many things. We really didn't want to do premium, enterprise, semi, because it was all used. We thought about servers, but we didn't want it to be confused with servers because it's not about servers, and we want to stress it out. It's about sites. It's about hosting sites. It is for people who want to host websites. So that's why. And we wanted to alleviate the access to highlight the point about it being able to grow. And that's where the name came from. It's about sites. It's about elasticity of the sites, and that's how we came up with it.
Aaron, got anything to add on to that?
Yeah, and while we were doing it, Igor was looking up trademark registrations and trying to figure out which was the domain names were available. So he very much playing conducting us as we were coming through the brainstorming process.
Yeah, I think I registered the domain before we hanged up. I think I registered the domain before we decided on the name. But that's the important point. So we actually created the trademark for the Elastic Sites term, and we have the guidelines today for that. And there is a reason for that. So we want it to be property of the industry. We don't want to have it. So what we are planning to do it with the future is to qualify the people who can use it based on this settings that they do provide as much resources, and you can find on the website how much resources we consider it a requirement. We will require people to have isolation technology. We will require people to use resource limits technology, but it doesn't have to be done by Cloud Linux. We know there is several larger hosts that don't use Cloud Linux for that. They have homegrown technology that are similar to Cloud Linux, and they're still qualified to do Elastic Sites. more than that, we want them to participate in elastic sites. So we will qualify anyone who will adhere to the principles of resources, isolation, and stability. And those people, like, to be listed on the Elasticsearch website, to use the trade name, they have to do that. They have to promote the name, etc. But the next step, and I think it's going to start rather soon, we want to create a panel of people from the industry who will actually manage the whole development of elastic sites as a concept in the future. It's not something that might branch out an errand and that's it, and no one else has the input. We do want the input from industry. We want hosting expert participating in it and driving it forward. And at some point, if it really takes the life of its own, we will just donate the trademark and website and the domain and everything to the nonprofit entity that will be governed as a nonprofit organization for the benefits of hosting industry as a whole.
Yeah. All right, I have one more from another one from the audience, and this one's actually at Walter. How do you move gigabytes of data without downtime if you use only dedicated boxes?
Well, that's of course a little magic sauce that we developed. But let's just say, I guess the core of it is that you start copying data, which of course takes a lot of time. But once you have copied 99% of the data, then basically the window of downtime is determined by how much time you need to do the last final sync, right? So you start copying a lot of the data, and then after you're done, you basically do one more check, and that's usually only a second because not much has changed in the meantime. If something had changed, then it will take longer. But in most cases, it's only one more second to do one more final sync, and then you're done, and you can switch to the other server.
Yeah, and I believe cPanel has that as well, that you move the data first, you do all the movement, and then at the last moment you move the last pieces of data and you restart it on a new server and you run the proxy on the old server. So I think all those pieces are there. So the main point here, from my perspective, is that the move itself can take days, but the downtime is what you minimize. So for example, customer wants to upgrade on Thursday, but his site will be upgraded on Friday. It's just that the downtime will occur on Friday and will last for 2 seconds or for 15 seconds. I mean, most customers will be fine with a minute or two downtime as well. So there is a room there is an opportunity for that, and more than that, you can still keep this. You can increase the limits for that customer on the old server as well quite often. You just realize that in the long term, I want to move them, and you start the move process after you increase their limits. Then you move the customer and the load is off, and you can add more smaller shared hosting accounts to the same server. So there is a lot of different ways to do it, and I think we will come up with a lot of hosters will come up with different strategies to do it. I think there is going to be software to help automate it. I'm pretty sure that VHMCS might be interested in automating it. We might create some kind of layer on top that would allow to automate it, because anything that sits on top of multiple servers might decide and be able to provision those moves in automatic fashion. And there is a lot of vendors who might want to participate in it, and we don't want to dictate which way you should do it. There is a lot of way to innovate, and a lot of secret sauce that you can create to make yourself better, more proficient, have better density, have better lower downtime. We don't want to dictate it. We will come up with the solutions. We will help you with the solutions, but it's not what it's all about. It's though it's very important to know how to do it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I know you guys, we talked about kind of like the idea of Elasticsearch, the naming and the trademark of it. So for the people that are listening in and the people that will be reading more about this going on, how do they begin to participate with the Elasticsearch initiative? Like, who do they contact? I kind of want to hear from all of you guys on what you guys imagine Elasticsearch turning into 6 months from now, a year from now, a couple of years from now, in terms of what its role in the industry.
Well, I think Igor addressed it a little earlier in that when we were coming up with a naming, we simply wanted a user-friendly description of the solution we were providing. And so really, as brainstorming and trying to come up with this concept that's really what we were trying to solve, is a digestible term that hosting providers could give to their customers, and then on the flip side, create an standard. So industry standard is going to be the tough part. But in the meantime, also being able to the end user that's using the product something that they can understand and wrap their heads around with was really what we were trying to solve at the initiative at the very beginning of this. And I think Igor can touch on that a little more.
Yeah, so I think the standard is the key. I really don't want to happen the same thing that happened with semi-dedicated hosting. People would run away just by hearing that name at some point of life. So for us, the standards are important. We don't know. That's the funny part. We know that they are important. We don't know what they are. We started fairly low. As we started, we actually pretty much right away found out that a lot of people are doing it already under different names, and they're starting to promote it as Elasticsearch as well. But I do want to see a lot of hosts selling things under the Elasticsearch name so that there is some name recognition that starts to appear in the market. And I do want to see some of the hosts willing to participate in the defining those standards. So what I want to see in 6 months, what my dream for the 6 months is to have hosters' participation in the whole idea of Elasticsearch and coming up what is a standard, what do they want to guarantee, and we would use trademarks to enforce that. So what we don't want is that everyone using Elasticsearch while providing crap service and bad service. We want Elasticsearch to stand for something, and hosts using this name to upsell and educate the market. And I think that will give a huge boost for the Elasticsearch concept, so that in 12-18 months, it will actually start to generate revenue for a lot of people simply because it's a name that people start to recognize. And it might happen a little bit, it might take a little bit longer. I know that standards and name take time to adopt. It might be 18 to 24 months before the name will have the life of its own, and people will instantly recognize it and understand what it is. But for that to happen, the next 6 months are very important. It's very important for hosts to adopt it, to start upselling it, and to adhere to some basic guarantees of what it really means.
Victor?
Yeah, so I think in terms of getting started, so the first thing, of course, you can do is as Igor said, you can start upselling your existing customers to Elastic Hosting. As you come across customers that need more resources, you can put them into this new service and test the waters like that. But on the longer term, I would definitely recommend thinking about basically rebranding your entire hosting offering, because that's what we did. We transformed, or we migrated all of our customers from traditional shared hosting to Elastic Hosting. And I think it's important to do that because, again, it's not so much about technology, it's way more about positioning, and it's very important to educate your customers what it's all about. So, if you sell Elastic Hosting as a premium offering, then you will give the sense to customers that when they have their, let's say, traditional shared hosting account, that they have not really experienced what it's all about. Compared to if you actually put them from the first moment on, you put them in Elastic Hosting, but at a very, in a small account, they will experience from the first moment what it's like, and they will much better understand that within that same concept, they can start growing. So that's one of the things that we do, for example, is we Even with the smallest customers, when they start out, they are already using Elastic sites, and we actually monitor them. Just like we monitor our servers, we also monitor every individual customer. And once they start growing, we will actually reach out to them. We will start with giving them tips about how they can be more efficient with the resources. But eventually they will grow to the point that they will simply need more resources. And then they can grow within their own familiar environment to more resources. So that's what I would definitely, once you've tested the waters and you understand the concept, I would really recommend thinking about how and when you will migrate all of your customers to this new concept.
So we actually have a fair amount of questions coming in from our guests and our audience members. But before I'm going to turn it over to the audience questions, I just want to let everybody know that there is a Facebook group, an open group under the name Elastic Sites for anyone wanting to chime in after this discussion as well. And you can also go to elasticsites.com. Igor, do you know if there's any other ways that people can get in contact and stay a part of the discussion about Elastic Sites as it continues to grow and as you guys continue to drive this initiative?
Well, we're in the first step, so I think the Facebook group and the site are the best. You can always email us at the site, like info@elasticsites.com. We'll get you someone from our team responding and guiding you through, etc. So that's a good start.
Awesome. So the first question I have from the audience is actually for Aaron. And so Aaron, can you confirm that cPanel transfer does resync at the end of a large account?
I can check with that. I post it to the Facebook group, or I can check with that. I don't know the answer right off the hand.
Okay, no problem. So I don't know if it was a little bit choppy, but so if you guys,
I don't know the answer off the hand, but I will check and get a solid answer into the Facebook of the webinar.
Okay. All right. Do you guys have a guide for creating the correct packages, allocating resource limits, and marketing the term Elastic Sites?
Yes, so Elastic website has a guide for what we consider Elastic Sites, and we do have the materials that you can use on your website to upsell, promote it. We did draft something that you can use as a template to display on your site on how you would upsell it to your customers, how would you send them email, how you would explain what it is, why it's better, etc. So it's all on the elasticsites.com.
Awesome. All right. So with more density, we can finance bigger systems also, so we can get advantage of vertical scales of resources. Sorry, this is a bigger question. How do you think about the way to grow? We move from standalone scene to cluster architecture 8 times data. So 1 second.
I can read it. Do you want me to?
Yeah, please.
With more density, we can finance bigger systems. Also, so we can get the advantage of vertical scale and resource usage. And the bigger, the better. I expect Elasticsearch systems moving from standalone servers to more efficient cluster setups with better storage solutions and with enterprise-class acceleration technologies. How do you think about the way to grow? We move from standalone scene to a cluster architecture, 8 times data center space savings. I don't know. So, and to explain why I don't know, is it going to be, are we going to move from standalone to cluster? Maybe yes, maybe no. My experience shows that once you go into cluster, it's much harder to administer. It's much hard. There is many more issues with the software. So it might happen for some. It might not happen for most. I still expect that a large number of hosters can use cPanel and just the bigger boxes to sell a lot of Elastic sites. So they wouldn't have to change the way they operate. At the other side, on the other hand, I can see some large companies investing into clustering solution. Will it end up better? I don't know. I mean, my experience shows what I know from the bigger hosts today is that those that used super sophisticated clustering solutions with all those best bells and whistles and storage and load balancers, etc., ended up today using cPanel and a lot of boxes. So I'm not a strong believer in a clustered shared hosting solution today, simply because of that experience.
Another audience question. So this is really for sites only and not application. How does this work for databases? This is an audience question.
Well, there is no difference if it's a site or databases. We're limiting resources for databases the same way we're limiting resources for PHP processes. So we limit CPU, we limit the memory, we don't limit, we limit CPU and I/O, but we don't limit memory. But on database level, it's shared cache, so it's not clear if you even need to limit memory. So, okay, if someone needs more resources on a database level, you give them more CPU and they automatically get more resources on the database level. Now, it might be, we might go further in the future and say, well, we do want to provide dedicated databases to the customer. And with Docker on a shared hosts, it might be possible. I don't know. Some people are researching that area. I don't know if cPanel researches that area, but there is clearly a movement into seeing what if we can run Docker container as part of a shared host to encapsulate something for the customer. And that might be your answer, but then it will play nicely in the same resource limitation on how much resources you give to the customer. You just run this Docker container inside of the limits that are given to the customer as you do this today, and the problem is solved.
This next one's for Wouter. It's from the audience. Igor mentioned customers upgrading to 4, 8, and 16 cores. Is there a need right now for shared hosted customers using this many cores and high memory?
Wouter, do you want to take this?
Could you ask the question again, because I didn't get it completely?
Yeah. It's, like Igor mentioned, customers upgrading to 4, 8, and 16 cores. Is there a need right now for shared hosted customers using this many cores and high memory?
Yes, absolutely. So before we started doing this, we were losing our best customers, right? I mean, when they started growing and when they actually really needed the resources because they got popular, they would move to a VPS server, and usually that was not a really good experience for them. And yes, today we actually have many customers that use many cores. So, you know, when you sign up as a new customer, you can start as high as 2 cores, but you can grow all the way to 16 cores, and people do that.
Yeah.
I see it that the reason we don't see, it's like the reason you don't see that ships might sink is because once they sink, you don't see them. You need someone to report it to you. The same with this shared hosting accounts. You might think that, hey, I'm giving them 1 or 2 cores and no one asking me for 16. Well, no one asking you for 16 because first they need to overgrow 4 cores, then 8 cores, and 12 cores, and only then 16 cores. And you are dumping them today at 2 cores. So, of course, it's not visible, but yes, there is a huge number of people that you are dumping today that would use 16 cores in a year.
And also the other way around. So we have a lot of people who right now in another company have a managed or unmanaged VPS, and they actually move to us because they know they can get the managed VPS quality for 10 times less the money.
Another question. Do you guys consider systems like AWS, Amazon Web Service, to be elastic since they do use the term a lot?
Well, simply because of Amazon's size, any name they put on any product will automatically work. Amazon has a lot of elastic resources from the standpoint that you can increase or shrink those resources. And the same with elastic sites. We want the customer to be able to increase the amount of resources they can use or shrink the amount of resources they can use for the site and pay accordingly. So that's the way we are looking at elasticity, and we believe it is similar to how Amazon is using. They're just applying it to different things and in a different way. And note, and it's quite important, it's not about being able to be elastic in a second notice. It's not about being able to grow resource usage in 5 minutes. That's not what most of your customers need. Most of your customers know that, okay, now I'm starting to use close to enough, close to maximum resources, and my site getting more and more popular, so for the next 6 months I'll need double that. And it's all about just providing the double that in a reasonable enough timeline, being 2, 3, 4 days. It's not about being able to increase in a second and then decrease 5 minutes later or 5 hours later. It's not about that. It's about framework of thinking of days, not minutes. And so I believe that will satisfy 95% of the existing customer base. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, just out of curiosity, I don't know if you guys have given thought to this, but this is an audience question as well. But how will elastic sites affect reseller plans? How will they make them less? Will they make them less interesting since they're limited to resource settings for all created sites?
Because I think reseller hosting is much more about that you're able to create separated accounts for your customers. It has not much to do with resources and stuff like that.
I'm on the same page. I agree.
Okay. All right. And another audience question: in the future, do you plan to raise license price to be fair with the density changes that will be driven by elastic sites?
We're not planning to do any pricing changes. Once again, we're thinking about it more in terms of industry initiative versus how much our product should cost or stuff like that. I also don't think it affects much anything of it. Like today, for most of the shared hosts, the price of Cloud Linux license is negligible once you account for the accounts, and the same should be on elastic sites, given that the price per account would rise dramatically, and your overhead from cPanel, from Cloud Linux, from any other software should disappear, and it will disappear much faster than it is as it relates to managed VPS. So no, we have no plans to change pricing.
Okay. This one is for an audience that actually went to the website. It said they see on the website that CPU limit is 4 cores. Does it mean you cannot sell 8 cores?
No, it's an entry-level limit. The sky is the limit, but it's a minimum requirement. So if you don't sell 4 cores, we will not list you on website, and we will not let you use Elasticsearch trademark. So you have to sell at least 4 cores, and that's kind of a guarantee, and we are thinking about bumping up that requirement to more at some point of time, probably within 6 to 12 months. But we want more input from the industry before we do that. And the reason we want it is that when people buy elastic sites, we want them to be sure that they can grow and they will not be pushed out because they are using too much.
We have another audience member wants to know, will this work with cPanel, and is anyone offering it with cPanel? I know Wouter mentioned he's currently not, but is anyone offering with cPanel, and will it work with cPanel?
I know for the fact that it does. So there is a directory of hosts. We haven't had a chance to add a lot. So what happened is that when we started to promote that webinar and people started to read about it, we had quite a few hosts saying, oh, we were doing it for ages now. We have it. We just have it under premium, enterprise, semi-dedicated, or whatever plan. And they're doing it with cPanel. They're doing it with cPanel today, and they're all, oh, we love it. It's our best thing. We are so successful with that. It's like we hear a lot of people quite happy with that offering and doing it. We had time to process just a few of them. There is more that's going to be on the website, but you can go browse the directory and see what exactly people are offering, how they're offering. It's going to change a little bit. We didn't require at first people to say that they're selling elastic sites. Now we're starting to require it more and more. But yeah, a lot of those hosts that listed in the directory today are using cPanel today to do that.
Yeah.
I would say most of them.
Yeah, is there any chance, from the audience, get any chance for Cloud Links to eventually support reseller level resource limits, such as allowing a reseller to use a total of 6 cores and 6 gigabytes of RAM at a time across their sites?
Yeah, so this is not Elasticsearch question, but yes, it will be available in Q2. We will actually have limited beta in Q1, but fully featured release is scheduled for Q2.
Okay. We have another guy who says, I'm based and operate in Auckland, New Zealand. My customers and the majority of the website traffic comes from New Zealand. In addition to the reasons you have mentioned, one of the reasons for me to move to from shared hosting to VPS was web page load speed. What do you suggest hosting companies whose page load speed is critical and who are located at a large distance from your Elasticsearch physical location should do? Server's physical location should do?
Well, you should take the VPSs, put them locally in New Zealand, and run Elasticsearch out of those VPSs. There is no reason, I mean, it's just where your infrastructure is, and we're not dictating where you should put your infrastructure.
All right, so another one says, I've been unsure how to set limits. Can you explain PMEM versus VMEM, and which is preferable to use?
Well, just don't use virtual memory, VMEM, just use physical memory limit, and that's it. As simple as that.
Okay, I also want to throw this one out there. So, as an example, so you say you have somebody that wants to run an application using Node.js. Would they be a candidate for potentially Elasticsearch?
Well, so today, from what I know, cPanel doesn't support Node.js. I don't know if any other control panel does, but basically, yes, if it is supported on your hosting platform, no, if it doesn't. So basically, anything that is supported on your shared hosting platform today is a candidate for managed hosting. If it's not, for Elasticsearch. If it's not, move them to VPS.
Are there, and this is from the audience again, are there SSL concerns with Elastic hosting for e-commerce sites?
No.
Well, if there is no concerns for shared hosting, then there is no concerns for Elasticsearch. And SSL and shared hosting is probably generator of most SSL certificates today.
Okay. So, do containers form part of the Elasticsearch requirements?
No. Isolation is containers, no.
Mm-hmm. All right, so one audience member has a kind of a suggestion. So it could be a good idea to change the name. There are so many elastics that this is already out there that the URL said before elasticsites.com. Pardon me. Yeah, it could be a good idea to change the name as there are so many elastics. This out there already that the URL said before elasticsites.com is full. I don't know if you guys can speak to that, whether or not, like, yeah, I know you guys have worked a lot on the name, but it seems like it's probably there to stick.
Well, if someone can come up with a better name, I have nothing against it. And any good name would have something similar to it probably as well. We didn't want to come with a name that has no meaning, simply because shared hosting had a meaning, virtual private servers had a meaning, dedicated had a meaning. So it seems like this industry does need a meaning and appreciates the meaning, so that's where we started from.
And a part of this preliminary discussion is to help create the meeting of Elasticsearch. Okay. If you guys have anything else you guys want to chime in. All right.
We're always open to better ideas.
Gotcha. All right. Well, so I mean, we have about like just a few minutes left the webinar before we wrap up. I'll kind of probably round up the last couple questions, and one audience member wants to know: can we start promoting our product as Elasticsites immediately, or should we wait until the standards are established?
So contact us. So contact us at info@elasticsites.com. Tell us what you are doing, and we will tell you if you are qualified to use a trademark. So it is a trademark. We are going to filter who can, who cannot use. Today, the requirements are that there is isolation, there is security, and there is at least 4 cores. So we specifically made them low enough. So as long as you satisfy those requirements, we will accept you and we will grant you the right to use a trademark, and we want you to use the trademark. We actually want you to do exactly that and say that you are selling Elastic sites. And we will back you up and we will list you on our website, etc. But do please contact us first.
All right, so could you deploy Cloud Linux with Elasticsites over public cloud? So instead of managing many boxes, it will only be one. It will only mean one means can do a drop puppet.
Sorry, I'm not sure the question. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, could you deploy Cloud Linux with Elasticsites over a public cloud?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you deploy it. It's once again, it's not about technology. It's not about location. It's not about dedicated servers, VPS, or a cloud servers underneath. It's about what exactly you sell to your customers and how you position it. And what we want you to sell is at least 4 cores, security, isolation.
Well, that being said, I mean, we have a few more questions come in, but for sake of time, I think we can, we still have those other forums that any of you guys listening at home can reach out at. There's elasticsites.com. There's info@elasticsites.com, and there's also an open group on Facebook for Elasticsites where the panelists, as well as some of the people on the Cloud Linux antagonists, as well as cPanel will probably be fielding or answering any additional questions you guys might have about Elasticsites and Elastic hosting. Right now, I just want to thank our panelists for gathering together today to have this awesome first fireside chat. Thank you, Igor. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Wouter. Did you guys have a good time today?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, well, that being said, thank you guys all at home. Thanks, panelists. And we look forward to speaking to you guys on the interwebs in those 3 locations that we mentioned before. We really hope that you guys can help us create and brand what Elasticsites aspires to become 6 months, a year from now, and 18 months from now. That is all. See you guys.
Thank you, everyone. I want to add one more thing. If we didn't answer your question, and I see there is like huge number of questions and we don't have time to get to them here, post them on Facebook group and I'll make sure to go one by one through them and answer all of them.
Awesome. And I believe the recording will also be available after this webinar is over as well, so you guys can also check back. Yeah, like Igor said, there is an open Facebook group for you guys to join in and keep the discussion going. All right, that is all, guys.
Thank you very much.